welcome to the Mindset Michelle TV show. I'm so excited that you're joining us for yet another episode, and we're so pleased that each week we keep getting more and more people who are saying how much they love seeing the show and how these tips for creating more successful mindsets are really helping people, especially with so much negativity and bad news around. It's one of our missions with doing this show to actually keep presenting people from all walks of life to help you to create that mindset for success yourself. And this week is no different. And this week I'm so super excited to have Marissa Sandler here on the show. Hello, Marissa.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited. Mindset is something I put a lot of thought into, and I love learning about it too. So I'm really excited to be here today.
Thank you. It's really lovely having you on the show. And for those of you that haven't met Marissa before, she's co-founder of Care Seekers, which is an aged care and disability services organisation that helps people in their homes with many different services. But I'm actually more interested in how you came to be doing that. I know you've been doing it for the last 5 years, but you're originally a lawyer, and it's got to be a really interesting story how you went from working in a legal profession, which is quite different, to working in aged care and disability. So please tell everybody a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you. So I thought I'd start my story a little bit further back than that. Actually, I was spent 15 years before doing Care Seekers as a human rights lawyer. And why that area interested me, I was born in South Africa and moved to Australia. I came to Australia when I was 5. We went via America. And my parents left South Africa because they didn't want to raise their children in apartheid. They didn't agree with that system, and they did not want to support it in any way, and so they made the decision to leave. So I think I grew up in a household where there was always a strong sense of justice and right and wrong and awareness around how people were treated. And I think I just carried that through my life. So when even at school, I remember, if somebody was being bullied, if I felt there was an injustice, it never sat right for me. And I feel like as much as I could, I would try to speak out on things that worried me. And then when I finished school, I thought the way I was going to bring this all together was as a journalist. I thought I really want to tell people's stories. And so I started studying social sciences, and then actually the next year changed to studying law. I think I was just loving university so much. I thought, how on earth, what can I study so that I can stay here as long as possible? And I could see how law could be relevant to journalism. And I was doing an internship with the ABC, and I was at a picket line, like at a protest. It was the World Bank protests in the early 2000s. And I was interviewing someone, and I was asking them questions, and I was overwhelmed by this feeling of, I don't actually want to be the journalist on this side asking the questions. I want to be on the other side fighting for things that I really believe in. So that sort of set me on the path to become a human rights lawyer. And I spent 15 years doing that. The first 10 years, my absolute passion was women's human rights. And I worked on a lot of domestic projects, things like helped bringing in paid maternity leave, and then also worked on sort of more international project, things around trafficking of women. Then I did a lot of work on women in prison and what that whole picture looks like. And I was working in the UK on a project on women's deaths in prison and custody, because there'd been a lot of women dying in prison, and looking at the picture and why that was happening. And I mean, it's that story, the person who's in prison is a victim of so many, there's domestic violence, there's a history of abuse, and it's just that complete cycle that you see in people's lives. And I really loved that work, and a lot of it was policy work and sort of research work. And I decided I wanted to represent clients in court. And so I landed up working on a project which represented mothers primarily who were having their children taken away from them by community services because they had an intellectual disability. And there was a feeling that because they had an intellectual disability, they were not fit to look after their child. So I was their lawyer, and arguing sometimes a right decision was made, and it was about making sure that the fair process was followed, but other times the decision wasn't right. And we were actually, I'm still in contact with clients to this day who are raising their children beautifully. And through that process, so I did that. It was great work, but it was also very, very heart-wrenching, and the losses were enormous. I mean, the outcome was that a family wasn't living together. And I had my own small children at the time, and I had a case in particular that just hit so hard. It was one that we didn't win, and the child was sort of the same age as my child, and I sort of started to feel quite burnt out. And at the same time, there was the National Disability Insurance Scheme rolling out in Australia, and some of my clients were actually in that scheme in the trial days, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. It was all about choice and control. And what I was also starting to realize is that the problems when I was coming into people's lives, the issues I was trying to solve for them were really challenging. Trying to get somebody's child back or legal issues, it's really hard. That's not an easy place to help people. And the story that I kept seeing was that if people had really good support in their lives, and if they could have somebody who was there, who understood them, who worked with them to achieve their goals, the legal problems could be avoided. And so I wanted to do something that was more preventative around helping people that they could live with dignity, with their human rights, with independence. And so together with my sister, we set up Care Seekers. And it's literally that very typical startup story where the two of you sit at your kitchen bench, which is what we did for the first 2 years. The first year of doing Care Seekers, I honestly could have quit every single day. It was very, very grueling, to say the least. So many things went wrong. It was really a battle of mindset over everything else in that environment. But we pushed through, and we landed up being the business that we are today, which is we have over 14,500 workers on our platform. We provide 200,000 hours of support. We employ 20 people, and it's a really thriving business. But for me, it was a story. I guess my origin story is I was always going to do something that helped people. That's where I'm my happiest, when I am helping people. It was always going to be a story of where I felt things were wrong, trying to do my best to right them in some way. But that's been a journey too, and realizing what's right for me and what's right for another person are two very different things. I've had lots of learnings along that experience too, but never thought that I would land up owning a business and running a business, but just absolutely really love doing it and just learn so much every single day.
Wow, what a story. And you tell it so well as well, which is fabulous, because there is that thread throughout it, that there is that service to others and fighting for the injustices and being on the side to help people, whatever that injustice is. And you show such a depth of insight as to what motivates you and how that journey has been one of, understanding, well, sometimes you do burn out when you're doing things for the side of justice, and then the preventative side. I really love how you came to that realization about how important it is to stop things escalating to that point where, yes, people are losing their children. It's a very interesting mindset then to ask you the question around, well, what does success then mean to you? What do you think when I say success? What areas of your life does that most resonate with for you?
I think that's such an interesting question. And I think had you asked me that question when I was 21, it would be a very different answer to how I would answer it today. And for me, it's been a real journey, what success looks like. I remember when I finished university and I sat down and had a piece of paper and I wrote down endpoints. I wrote down, these are the different jobs that I'd like to see myself doing. And this is at the end, but it was like, okay, I'd like to be a barrister, I'd like to be involved in high-level policy, like whatever they are. And I thought, okay, that's where I want to end, and how do I work backwards to get there? And I think, funnily funnily enough, today I would answer it the exact opposite. And I think very early on, I was really fortunate to work with an incredibly inspiring group of women. And one in particular said something to me that probably changed me from looking at that end goal and my success being achieving that end goal. She said to me, Marissa, if you always do jobs that you love, you will do them well. And when you do something well, good things will happen. Because when you are focused, when you define success as that end goal, there's years between being your 21-year-old self and reaching that end goal. And you could land up having to take a lot of jobs that you do not like along the way. And you could spend a lot of years very unhappy. And I could have seen how that could have happened to me. And I actually remember once I went for an interview at a law firm because I thought that was part of a particular path. And the partner wrote me such a beautiful letter back. He said, I don't think that you could do the job. He said, but I don't think it's going to bring you any happiness having met you. And so I'm not going to offer it to you. And I was so cross. I was like, you don't know. And this is what I need. I need to do this to reach my success of achieving that. But I think in the end, I did land up following a lot more of the advice I was given by this woman that I really respected. And so I did. I chose jobs that I really liked, that I really enjoyed, that for me, success was and is to this day very daily, as opposed to a big picture. It's finishing my day and going, today, did I make an impact? Did I have purpose? Did I connect with people? Have I finished my day feeling like I contributed positively to the world? And every day that I can say yes to that is a success to me. And I can honestly say that that is my benchmark of success. And that is how I feel most days. And if I don't feel that way, then I change course. Like that to me is my benchmarks on what success looks like to me. So if I really have to distill it down, everybody's success is so different and so personal. Is something else I've learned over the years. But for me, it's number one about having purpose in my day. And number two, it's about having connections in my life. And so for me also, I'm the type of person that if I was 100% focused on work and I didn't have beautiful relationships with my husband, with my children, my sister, my parents, my friends, that wouldn't work for me either. So it's always for me achieving these two outcomes, that I'm doing purpose, feeling fulfilled and having connection. And if either of those ever feel out, I really do have to come back to the drawing board and start again. And I think something else that I've really strongly learned through many lessons in life, but through my own initially, through my career choices, and then just through many personal experiences. And I know it's such a cliche, but for me, success is the journey and what that looks like. It is not a destination. And even at Care Seekers, we're a very values-driven organization. And one of our values is integrity. And there's just no way that I could ever think, okay, well, what's my end goal? And how do I achieve that end goal? And step on whoever I needed to and do things unethically and without integrity. I always would need to feel a huge sense of pride in the journey that I've taken to get somewhere, to feel that I have been a success in it. But it also was a very strong process of letting go. It has been, when I look, am I holding those high positions that I envisaged that I would? Probably not, because I probably gave up some of that along the way. But I also had different things that I learned. Like I always, in my head, I
might just interrupt there because it's a lot of information and it's a lot of really valuable information. And I really want to make sure that as we go through, that people are hearing some of the incredible stuff that you're saying. So firstly about, yes, it's the journey. So success to you is around that journey and not necessarily just having the destination at hand. And throughout the day, that then translates into the connections and purpose. And I think those are two really valuable aspects to think about and to have front of mind as you're going through each of your days and as you're looking at the work that you're doing, especially the work you're doing now with people that are more vulnerable in society. And I love how that has then translated into the integrity for care seekers and one of the values that you hold there. And that I guess we've already started around some of the suggestions, because obviously having a purpose, and then having that clarity that if your purpose and if your communication or your relationships are out of balance, then coming back into balance is obviously a great suggestion. But what other types of suggestions or what other tips or suggestions would you have for people that are watching this and going, wow, so much passion, so much energy that's coming across? How can they as well generate this much passion in their lives and have that same kind of focus that I'm seeing around living a life that you choose and having that positive mindset? What would you say to them?
I think my things are purpose and connection, but I think a really valuable exercise for everyone to do is to sit down and think about what are your values and that drive you in your day, and going through that process of thinking for me it was 2, but it might be 2, 3, 4 values that you hold in your life and that you need to live through every single day, and doing that exercise. I mean, we did them as a company and I do them as an individual, and I think that would be probably my number one tip, is to do that, to very much think, what are my values and how do I live my life to those values? Because if you live your life to your values, to me that's an authentic life, and that is a successful life. So that would probably be my absolute first tip. I think some of the things that I've struggled with and is sort of can get into a negative mindset, and how do I get out of that? I mean, I know things that, and increasingly as I get older, like turning to things like meditation and really understanding, like not to let your negative thoughts are not you, and to really choose to be really active in what thoughts you choose to have and how you allow yourself to think is probably another tip that I'd have. And I'm by no means an expert on that. I'm the most junior student on that. But I think just always that concept, coming back to that in every situation, you have a choice, how you respond to it. The next step is always your choice. And I think just really, so that's really worked for me as well. And
so
I think also blocking up.
Sorry, I was just going to say, just on that tip around choosing what thoughts to pay attention to, I think that that's a really valuable and very important element of creating a successful mindset. So if during the day, things aren't going well in the business with an employee or somebody you're supporting, and you're having to have difficult conversations or challenging conversations, how do you then, as those conversations or those challenging situations come up, how do you then keep focusing back on the positive? What sorts of things do you, when you're in those situations, do to keep focusing on the positive?
I never go into a conversation without being prepared. Like, I think I'm prone to being quite an emotional person. And if I'm captured in a moment in a difficult situation or a difficult conversation completely unprepared, that won't work for me. So I might listen to someone and say to them, thank you so much for telling me how you feel. I'm just going to need some time to get back. I'm going to need some time to gather my thoughts and get back to you, because I know that my initial first response has a tendency to be a very emotional one. So I need to give myself that space and time to step away, to think through what they've said, to think about my response, and then come back to them. So and if I need to have a difficult conversation with someone, I think about what I'm going to say. I make a time with them. I'm not someone who's going to just enter into a fight or a difficult situation, on the back of Tuesday morning. Like, it's a very well thought out process for me, because I think conflict really takes its toll on me, and I'm not so good in the heat of conflict, and I need my space and time. So I'd rather just walk away, gather myself, and come back is how I would handle it.
What wonderful advice. And I'm sure people watching and knowing that you've gone from a kitchen table with your sister to this hugely successful organisation are listening to these tips and going, oh, wow, they can go and implement that. It's nothing overly complicated, but it works, and you're living proof that it works. And I think you're also a great example of the language that you're using and the way that you're describing these suggestions is very self-aware. You're very aware of what's working for you, and that's why these are great examples that you're sharing. what would you say has been one of the greatest things to help you to become so self-aware of what works for you and what doesn't work for you?
I think I don't like feeling, I think, yeah, I don't like finding myself in situations where I'm having conflict with people. Like, I've got a very strong sense of how I want to live my life and how I like things to feel. And some of that's not necessarily positive. Like, I really don't like conflict, so I will do anything to avoid it. But conflict can't be avoided, and conflict is good and positive. So just kind of thinking, okay, well, how do I make these situations work for me? Like, just a sense of, I hate being in a lot of emotional turmoil. I do like things quite calm internally and externally. And that's when I can operate at my best. So I think trying to get to those positions has led me down a number of those paths. And obviously, as challenges arise, you think, how can I address this? I'm someone who also very much believes in patterns. Like, if you see yourself coming up against the same thing, or you see yourself facing those same emotions time and time again, look inside you. It's not that you're constantly being faced with people who are like this, or situations who are like this. You might be, but really, again, only your response is what you have control over. So I think I'm very much someone who likes to focus on what I can control, which ultimately is myself. I can't really change and control others around me.
What a fabulous way of explaining how you do it for yourself. And I love how you have that, again, that understanding that it's about the conflict, that in a sense is a trigger for you. So you set things up to avoid it as much as you can. And I'm guessing then that the relationship, because you also, as you said, your co-founder is your sister. Yeah. So you obviously have a great relationship with your sister. And you're saying there's no conflict, you don't borrow each other's lipsticks and get upset or anything?
We have been the best of friends since we were young. Yes, she always took my clothes and always took my makeup. And a couple of years ago, I called her. We don't live in the same house now, obviously. I called her when a piece of my makeup went missing, and she had it. I do not know how. But we really do have an unbelievable relationship, and always have. I think as siblings, you either can work together or you can't, and there's not much in between. We bring completely different skills to care seekers, and we operate quite differently. And so we just divide and conquer. We really don't get in each other's way all that much. Like, we really operate like co-founders with separate skills. Obviously, we come together to make big decisions about the company, but we're quite aligned on those. But on the day-to-day, we don't cross paths all that much. She's in charge of all the technology, all the marketing. She's very creative. She's the ideas woman. I'm the CEO. I'm more of the HR, compliance, legal, running the company. So it's a very neat, clear split. But we're very fortunate. We've just always got along brilliantly. Like, there's 4 years between us. And it's interesting. I raised 2 girls today. And I always have to remind myself, they do get along actually very well, my girls, but I have to remind myself mine and my sister's relationship is quite unique, and I can't use that as the sibling benchmark. Like, I know
it's a pretty high benchmark, yes. and it's wonderful to hear about all the success, because I think that's another part of we don't necessarily have the time to talk about on this show, but the success in your company is also the success in your relationships with your sister, with your 2 beautiful daughters that you're raising, and your husband, and in other areas of your life. What do you think, with having so much understanding about yourself and what motivates you, what do you think helps with interpersonal relationships, like outside of care seekers, or even with care seekers, when you're dealing with perhaps people that don't have the same values as yourself?
I can struggle with that sometimes. And I think what I always have to remind myself is that everybody sees things differently. My way is just my way. It's not the right way. And I just have to remind myself of that. I can get very I can get, if somebody doesn't respond to a situation as I would necessarily want them to, or think that they should, I can sort of be like, but that's not right. That's not how it is. But I just remind myself, I'm not right. there are different ways. There are 10 different ways you can do something. I always use such a silly example, but I'm in a book club and, you all read the same book and everyone has a completely different view. And you thought your interpretation of the book in your head was correct, or was the interpretation of the book, but it's not. And so I always remind myself that everybody comes to things and everybody sees things through different lenses, but that can be a struggle for me. Like, I have to pull myself back on that all the time. It's not something that I'm not naturally so accepting of people's differences. It's a constant reminder and struggle job for me, that element of interpersonal relationships.
Well, and of course, hearing about conflict and avoiding conflict as well, which must be interesting when you were a lawyer, because that's all about conflict. But yeah. I'm guessing, again, it makes sense because people tend to work in areas where that they're doing the working through their own issues, if you like, around you don't like conflict, so you go and work as a lawyer, sort of.
It's very structured conflict as a lawyer. Like, it's unbelievably structured. You go into court with your arguments prepared, you make your arguments, you're doing written submission. So you get what I need, which is that time to prepare, to think things through.
Yeah. And I think that's great. And also how you describe it helps with, placing aside emotions when you're in those sorts of situations. And then working and being around people with different values, that same sort of process and way of dealing with it, as well as, yes, accepting that not everybody has the same views on things. And I loved the example there you had about the book club. I think it's the same with movies. Sometimes when you're talking to people about movies and you think, did we see the same movie? Did we actually read the same book? Because people have such different reactions, understandably, to things. So there's so many different things that we could talk about, and you have such a wealth of experience in so many areas. How can people, if they wanted to reach out, get in touch with you?
Sure. The easiest way to get in touch with me is through email. I mean, I do have some social media, LinkedIn, and email is probably the best way. So marissa@careseekers.com.au, or on my LinkedIn profile, which is Marissa Sandler. I do have Instagram, though probably not that good on it. So those would be the best two ways to get in contact with me.
Fabulous. And of course, if you Google Care Seekers as well, I'm sure that's another way to
absolutely
find out more. That's fabulous. And I love asking this question because you have come from such an interesting background with South Africa and being a lawyer and being an advocate for those more vulnerable in society, and all the way through now to setting up an organisation that works with aged people and disabled people. So given how much success and how well things have gone in many ways for you, is there any advice that you might give to your younger self?
Do you know, there are so many things that I wouldn't change about how I've done that I've done things through my life externally, but I think that my internal world journey probably could have made things easier for myself. I think things like, and a lot of it I absolutely love, Desiderata. I don't know if you know that piece of writing, and there's things that I love in there that I think are so true, and I wish I'd really understood them when I was young. That whole concept of like, everything passes, good or bad, it passes. So don't despair, don't be arrogant, because it all passes. Just understanding that the things that you worry about and the things that are really going to rock your world are two completely different things. Like, if I could just have reduced my level of worry, and that would have definitely assisted me. And I think also sometimes realizing that, that equation, like happiness is reality minus your expectations, and just thought through my expectations. I think that all of those things probably could have made my internal world journey, especially when I was younger, a lot easier. Just have faith a little bit more than maybe I did, not to worry so much. But a lot of my sort of planning and things like that have worked in my favor. So those bits I probably wouldn't change. But life is a journey, and I think it just goes round and round and on all the time. And who knows what the next 40 years are going to hold either.
Who knows? And given the outstanding success that you've had to this point, you know, the world, I love when I was a kid, my sister gave me a poster that said, the world is your oyster. And it really was, you know, you can be, do, have anything you want. And it's interesting. And I love how you finished talking about the internal journey. Many a time as I was going through my earlier adult years and achieving things and getting that success, I was also thinking, well, what next and what's the point? And so that internal journey, which does come more later in life for people, where you really start to understand, well, actually, if I had have let go of all that small stuff, if I had of this, I had of that, then you'd be more present and you'd enjoy life more, even when outwardly you might have been hugely successful at that point in time. Well, Marissa, it's been absolutely fabulous having you on the show today. Thank you so much for coming along.
Thank you so much for having me. Such a wonderful show. I think anything around mindsets is just so helpful to all of us as we try be humans.
Fabulous. Well, and to all you viewers out there, again, thank you for tuning in today and for hearing from yet another incredibly successful person some of the wonderful things and the wonderful suggestions that Marissa's made today about how you too can implement things to help focus on having that positive mindset. But for now, from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.